of the notion of ethics. And what does that mean in the mentoring arrangement? And what are ethics? One of the elements from a mentor perspective in the Certificate of Competence mentor, we first started off by saying, okay, well, you got to understand about fairness and understand about respect and trustworthiness. And then what we did is we brought it together and we call it the to manage from the arrangement through ethical values. And there's 7 ethical values that we have brought to the foreground. But let me just share the following with you. People ask me, okay, well, what's the difference between ethics and morals? And it's one of those questions, again, it just depends how you grew up with what word, but this is how I answer it, okay? And I'll say, well, morals is the way in which you live up to your skin. Ethics is you're living with others from your skin outward. And I go, okay, that helped me when I learned that, and that came through a great connector that I had in this world of ethics. And he shared that with me, and I went, okay. So there's certain things about how I'm going to go about doing and why beliefs, the assumptions, perceptions, opinions, up to my skin. But when I go to share, when I go to interact with the world, then there are these ethical values. And therefore, there had to be something called ethically neutral values. There are things that are important, but they're not important to everyone. But ethical values, when expressed and when you hear the words, yes, I agree. We do share those with one another. And let me offer some to you, all right? And then I'm going to ask you to jump in and see what you'd like to add, Doug, before we talk a little bit more about what might be called ethical decision making, okay? So one would be accountability, to be accountable for what it is that you're doing. Another one is this sense of citizenship and deeper community involvement. There is an ethic around that one. The word caring, and understand the connection between careful, careless, and caring, okay? Then there's this whole idea of fairness and justice. So there's this also this area of respect that's important. And that leads me into trustworthiness, which is another one. But there is another one that I think is becoming even more important in our world, and I'm going to use the word hospitality. And it isn't always used from an ethical point of view in things like ethical decision-making in businesses, but I think it's important, this notion of welcoming those who've not arrived yet. And therefore, if we take a look at these ethical values, what we share between ourselves, the notion of accountability, community citizenship, caring, fairness and justice, respect, the idea of trustworthiness, and I will add hospitality to it. Any thoughts about the morals, the ethics, ethically neutral, ethical values? Any thoughts there, Doug?
Staunch about, I guess, is the aspect of making sure that I'm able to bring value to an organization and to the person they are asking me to mentor. And what I typically will say, if at any time I feel that I'm no longer bringing value, I will have a conversation about what we need to do next in order to be able to do that. For me, it's value. It's also conduct, how I conduct myself not only in the relationship that I'm going to develop with the mentee or the protege, but also how I conduct myself in that organization as well. So the interaction I have with, say, the management team or the board of directors or whoever it may be, but how I conduct myself and how I conduct the practice of mentoring. So the practice that I've developed, how I conduct that, I want to make sure that I'm ethical in that approach, being able to do that. And then from a process, which is part of how I conduct myself, the process is making sure that from a ethics perspective is, am I continuously learning? Am I making the changes that we need to in order to make sure that mentoring is positioned as a solution going forward, especially now where we're dealing with the pandemic and all of that things. Have I ensured that the processes that we need to use in order to be able to help people dealing with things that they're experiencing, have I ensured that those processes from a practice perspective are in place? So that's important. And you talked about caring. So caring, I think, fits into the whole value perspective. And then the other one that jumped out for me was trustworthiness, was that, that comes back to the value piece as well, and the caring piece, is that I want to be seen as somebody who is very trustworthy when it comes to sitting down and having a conversation. I know that if I sit down with Doug and have a mentoring conversation, that, say, for example, it's going to be one that is the overarching safety net is that it's going to be confidential, that what we talk about in that room stays in that room between the two of us.
Right. Great connection to certain ones there. And I would offer as well, from an ethical decision-making perspective, there are 10 steps that, and I've done workshops around this. I'm just going to talk about the first couple, because when you're faced with an issue, whether it's a problem or it's an appreciation, and problem is something that needs to be solved and it brings concern. The appreciation is one that is, how do I extend this, expand this, and it comes from a place of joy. If you describe that issue, we'll put words wrapped around it. And then I will say to people, okay, then describe that amongst yourselves and see where you come up with. And then I would say to them, okay, let's take that and let's use the filter, the 7 filters, ethical value filters, and let's figure out which one of those 7 is blinking like a neon sign at the diner. We're open, we're open, we're open. Because you can make a case for all 7. But which one is it that's really blinking? Because from that perspective, you can then start to open up what are possibilities here to be able to deal with that. Because what you've done is you found a way in which to lessen the energy motion, the emotions that go with the story that's been created. And, oh, okay, let's slow this down just a little bit. Let's figure out what this is and open it up. Now, again, you may not figure out the first one, maybe not correct. You might find that one or the other. But that conversation allows you, because if you're doing it with other people, and you can do it with yourself because you're having a conversation with yourself, you actually start to look at it in a very different way, and you go, And this is where the question and answer approach, which is another element of the whole story of mentoring, you start to unravel it in a different way. And I believe that understanding the ethics and the ethical values from a mentoring point of view is of great value to any situation in which you find yourself. Because a mentee may come and maybe spinning, and that spin is a really tight spin, and they're just wound up, and you can just use this way of connecting with them to take the spin away, and they can see things a little bit more clearly. But also, to your point, Doug, it's about how you and the mentor and the mentee right, are going to interact with one another.
No, I agree. Yeah, it very much can shape the path to how that interaction between both takes place for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the programs, short courses that we will be offering is how to bring that 10 steps of the ethical decision making to the foreground, because there's an element there where you get to evaluate what action outcome you're going to take. And it's quite interesting, the three ways in which to do the check and balance of it. And I've done this many, many times with many organizations and groups of leaders and managers. And there's always that, oh, wow, right? And because
Yeah.
once you learn it, you can do it yourself fairly quickly, all right, and figure out what's going on. So in those moments of breaths, you can go, oh, right, filter data. Oh, I think I know what's going on here. And now you do a check and balance using the question and answer, and you get to unfold it in a different